Okay, I think it's time we can get started. It's April 7th. This might be the ninth class, and I see the end in sight. First, I want to thank the Sasson family. Rabbi Kelman's not here, so he asked me to do the honors to thank the Sasson family for sponsoring these series of classes on Rav Goren and the Langer affair. Let me begin because it's almost Pesach with something that's actually going to be on a blog post, not my next one. My new blog post, it's done, but it really won't appear till after Pesach sometime. But I have to split it into two. I came across something quite interesting. I came across in a book about the women of Jerusalem in the late 19th, early 20th century. I have it here. It's called Princess or Prisoner: Jewish Women in Jerusalem. It was 1840 to 1914 by Margalit Shiloh. And in fact, I'm curious. This Margalit Shiloh, if I'm not mistaken, she is the wife of the late Shmuel Shiloh, if anyone knows, who I believe is the brother of Saul Schimmel. Some people might know. But it's about women in Jerusalem. And she tells the following story, which is relevant to Pesach. It has to do with the wife of Rabbi Diskin, Rav Moshe Yehuda Leib Diskin, who she was something of a character, had a very strong personality. In fact, she had her own like Hasidim. So she was a big machmir. And it's recorded that she was on Pesach. She didn't like the rulings of her husband, Rabbi Diskin, the famous Rabbi Diskin, the orphanage. And she said to him that I don't care. Your halachas, your Shulchan Aruch is going to make our house treif. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, wait a second, I know a very similar story. In fact, I told the similar story, and I said that I had been told that Chaim Soloveitchik at an AJS conference, Association of Jewish Studies, told the following story that his mother, she came back from the hospital. She came in the house and she saw milk and meat dishes in the sink, and she started screaming, "What are you doing with milk and meat in the same sink?" And the Rav replied, according to the Shulchan Aruch, this is okay. And she said, your Shulchan Aruch is going to trafe up my kitchen. That's the story as it's told. But then when I saw the story of Sonya Diskin, who said basically the same thing about Pesach, that your Shulchan Aruch is going to make our house, non-kosher of Pesach. Because, by the way, I don't want to take away anyone's joy in cleaning, but according to the Shulchan Aruch, these little crumbs and everything, they're not chametz. I mean, there's a big difference between Pesach and what the Shulchan Aruch says is kosher Pesach. So this story with Sonia is probably legendary, and I'm thinking now, but how could you have the same exact story with two people? So I wrote to Chaim Soloveitchik. And I have his permission to tell you the actual, read word for word from his email. So I told him that he knew about the story of Sonya Diskin. I didn't know about it till recently. So I told him the story that I heard, and he tells me, quote, the story is half true. We like to be exact in these classes. So although it was a great story, Mrs. Soloveitchik saying your Shulchan Aruch is a trafe up my kitchen, what he says is as follows, quote, yeah, I told the story, about the milk and the meat dishes. He says the story is half true. My mother said, quote, you are making my kitchen trafe. My father said nothing, and neither did I. People have prettied up the story by fusing it with the well-known story of Sonya the Rebbitzin, the wife of Rabbi Diskin. So Chaim already knew the story of Sonya. So the true story is that she did say you're trafing up my kitchen. What was, in his words, prettied up, that is, the legend added onto the story, is that the Rav replied, the Shulchan Aruch said it's okay, to which she replied, your Shulchan Aruch is going to trafe up my kitchen. So yes, she said you're making my kitchen trafe, but that was the beginning of the story, and there wasn't. The Rav didn't reply, and Chaim's point, I guess, in when he gave the talk in AJS was that sometimes the practices of people are more important than what the law actually says. You're going to tell a Jewish woman who's been keeping a kosher home all these years that you don't really have to do this. It's like Chaim says that. Until he learned Yoreh De'ah, he didn't know that according to halacha, you can serve cold cuts on a dairy plate. But you find me a Jewish home where they're going to serve cold cuts on a dairy plate. It's just there's certain things that are just not done, even though technically they could be permissible. So there, I made that correction, and it'll be in print when my post appears. So let us pick up now. The last thing we said is I quoted to you really the final element of lumdus from Rav Goren, and actually this is not really from him. It's from one of the Dayanim, the anonymous Dayanim, which he adopts this view of the Itter, the this medieval the from Marseille. As I said, we're going to be in God willing, and there's still a few spaces if anyone wants to join us on our trips to France, Provence, really, and Nice, and or Italy. That if you recall, he raised the problem. How is it that a meshumad could give a get? Meshumad, according to the Itur, according to Torah law, has no authority to give a get because he's basically a guy. So the Itur says it's the reason the get takes effect is because Chazal, the rabbis, have the authority. They control marriage. When you marry, you get married under their authority. This idea is used in a few different cases. And therefore, it's not that the divorce works, it's that by the power of the rabbis, they void the get retroactively. They have the authority to retroactively void the marriage retroactively. So it's as if you were never married. And like I said, there's a few cases where the rabbis in the Talmud speak about this. That since we get married under the authority of the rabbis, it's called afkinu, that they can uproot the marriage. And that's so. Therefore, when Borakovsky, when he wanted to marry later on, when they're already in Israel, um, since technically he was married to his wife, still gave her a get, and since he has the status of meshumad, because we have testimony that he went to church and things, therefore he doesn't really divorce his wife, but his marriage to his wife, Chava Langer, going all the way back to Poland, it's as if, according to Itter, it never took place. And since it never took place, she was never married to him. Therefore, her second marriage to Langer was not an adulterous marriage. The kids are not mamzerim. Okay, that's a sniff. That's an extra thing he throws in. But as we saw, the major point is that there's no proof they were ever married. This idea which I just mentioned from the Itter, is similar to another idea that was expressed by the great sage Rav Shalom Shvadron, the great Marsham. Really, the final posek in Galicia, the greatest, they call him the posek Acharon. He wasn't the final, there were many poskim after him, but he was a very important authority. If I send a get to my wife, and then by a messenger, I can send it through a shaliach, and then while the messenger is taking the boat, across the sea to give it to my wife, I can. What happens if I cancel the get? I can cancel the get, just like I bring witnesses together and say I'm canceling this get. Just like I can establish a shaliach, I can cancel it. But the problem is that the shaliach doesn't know I canceled it. He's going to go and give it to the woman, and the woman is going to accept the get and assume she's divorced, and then she'll get remarried, and all sorts of chaos now, adultery, mamzerus, etc. So, using this principle that we get married with the authority of the rabbis said that she's still regarded not as divorced, because how can you get? There's no divorce according to Torah law. I voided the get. However, it's as if she was never married. The sages determined that she was never married, which she'd be able to marry a Kohen then, because she never was divorced. She was never married. Okay, so the Marsham in the end of the 19th, early 20th century says he dealt with a case of Mamzerus, and he says that if you had spoken to me earlier on, before this, um, before the person, I forget the details, before the person remarried and I forget now why he says it was too late. Um, but or maybe because the other rabbis ruled, I don't remember. But he said, had you spoken to me about this earlier, we could have perhaps, he leaves it as a perhaps, used the idea of the Marsham, That is, here you have the second marriage, the children of mamzerim. So instead, we'll have the first husband send a get, and then we'll have him cancel the get. And retroactively, it's as if he was never married to the wife. So her second marriage, it's not an adulterous marriage. He didn't do it in practice, but we have testimony that this was later done. In fact, there's a scholar in Israel named Radziner. He records all this testimony. Rav Frank did this after the Holocaust when there's a case in Ponevezh, I believe, of a student there whose mother remarried and was a mamzer. And we have a number of cases. Rav Unterman suggests using this. Rav Avad Yosef adopted this. We have numerous, Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, we have numerous examples where halacha l'maisa, in our day and age, this solution of the Marsham has been accepted. So I don't know today why there would ever be an issue mamzerus anymore, because we know that the Batei Din in Israel are using and have used the Marsham's solution. So Jacob says the get Marsham only works if the first husband's alive. Yes, because the first husband is the one who has to send it. But I don't remember. I have to look now in the Marsham what the actual case was there, why he said it was too late. And for him, it was only theoretical anyway. But he says, had you asked me earlier, and so there are many. We have a number of Rabbanim who use this, so it's a similar idea. Okay, Rav Zloty, in his critiques of Rav Goren, has a few other criticisms. Remember that there was Rav Goren, and then there were 9 Dayanim. And he cites their testimony, but anonymously. And there were 3 Dayanim, Rav Goren and 2 others, who were actually on a Beis Din who heard testimony. So when the final psak was given, only Rav Goren's name appears. Now, the general practice is, if you look at from Batei Din, all the people's names appear. In fact, not just all the names. If it's a Beis Din of 3 and it's the ruling is 2-1, they tell you who's in the majority and who's in the minority. Yet Rav Goren says this is not required. And he cites here, look in the Rambam, Hilchos Sanhedrin. This is chapter 22, halacha 8. If either of the litigants asks the court to compose a record of the judgment, they write it for him in the following manner. So in other words, you go to Beis Din gives a ruling. It's not like today where they write it down. They don't write it down unless they're asked to write it down. So how would they write it? So-and-so came to this and this court with so-and-so, the opposing litigant, claiming this and this. He was vindicated or held liable. So the Beis Din records that these 2 people came to court and this person was victorious and the other person was not. The record is given to him without mentioning the names of those who vindicated him or those who held him liable. That is, it doesn't, it doesn't, despite the fact that Rav Zloty says this is not the minhag, we don't do this, the Rambam says, and you can rely on the Rambam according to Rav Goren, that the Beis Din does not need to say who the 3 judges are, who the 2 judges, the majority are, the 1 judge. No. Instead, it simply says from the statements of the court of such and such, Beis Din Shalponi, that's the Av Beis Din, so-and-so is vindicated. So that's exactly what happened in the case with Rav Goren. He followed the Rambam here. Furthermore, by the way, Rav Zloty disagrees with this. Rav Zloty says that all the Rambam means, let me show it to you again. Rav Zloty says that all the Rambam here means is that we don't have to say which judges ruled in favor of this person and which judges ruled for conviction and which judges ruled for acquittal. But the Rambam never says we don't need to know who's on the court. Remember, look at the Rambam's Lashon. Ve'ein maskirin shem hamazakin. We don't say who the people who vindicated him. Velo shem hamachayvin. Rather, Beis Din Shalponi. Midivreim is the Kaploni. So Rabbi Zloty says, look at the language here. We don't have to say who convicts and who vindicates, but we do have to say who is on the court. But Rav Goren could reply, that's not what the Rambam says. The Rambam says all you say are Beis Din Shalponi. Beis Din Shalponi means the court of such and such. The pshat, as we say in yeshiva, the pashut pshat is that You only say the authority of the headman of the court. That seems to be the language there. Further, and by the way, another important point. When do you need a beis din of three? When you hear halachic testimony. So, for example, if they're hearing testimony about how Barakovsky went to church or something like that, if you wanted to have some validity, so that's or other matters in this case, then you need a beis din of three. But if Rav Goren, just on his own, didn't take halachic testimony, if he just investigated the matter and determined that it's not a mamzer, then he can do like every other posek does, just declare the woman, Chava Langer as never having been married, the children not mamzerim. You don't need a beis din for this. Furthermore, after hearing the halachic testimony, Rav Goren could then on his own also make a decision. This is regarded as a matter of Isser and Heter, that one posek can issue a ruling, and generally, the state of Israel has a courts of law, so they function as a beis din. But in America, you bring a case of mamzerus to a posek, he looks at it, he issues his psak. There's no beis din. It's just one posek can do that, and a single posek can free a naguna, can free a mamzer. Okay. But the final point that Rav Zloty makes, the final significant point, he throws in all sorts of irrelevancies in his attack on Rav Goren as well, but or at least one or two irrelevancies. I don't know how many irrelevancies, but definitely irrelevancies. But he says that Rav Goren broke with procedure. If he uncovered new evidence, then rather than forming his own beis din, he should have sent it back to the original court to look at it, or the last beis din to look at it. Rav Goren's attitude was that these Dayanim, who've looked at it a number of times, they're no geya b'davar. They clearly don't want to admit that they made a mistake. And that's why, the Petach Tikva beis din had it like three separate times and refused to make any changes. And Rav Goren said that this is a matter of life and death. And they refused to look at the evidence anew. And therefore, Rav Goren said, in such a case, we can create a new beis din. That's what Rav Goren said. Now, that they weren't prepared to go against their original ruling. They're no geya b'davar. What Rav Goren didn't say, but I think he probably could have said, and I would not be surprised if he was thinking about this, is that the first beis din is compromised, and not just the first beis din, the other batei din, because they were afraid to rule leniently because of the Haredi response. We already saw the Haredi response: mamish terrorism, physical attacks, letter bombs, all sorts of threats. It could have led to murder. There's no question about this. So this is when you're faced, and obviously being thrown out of Haredi society or religious society, not having shidduchim for your children, the consequences were severe. And therefore, you could make a claim. I'm sure Rav Goren was thinking this, although he doesn't say it in his tshuva, that these Dayanim were afraid. And since they were afraid, therefore we had to take Dayanim whose identities would be kept secret. If you're on the beis din Agadol or the Petach Tikva beis din, your identity isn't secret. So it's very hard to give a decision. No one's blaming anyone, but it's hard to give a decision. Yes, it's lo saguru. You're not supposed to be afraid, but easier said than done. Most rabbis are afraid, and we see this again and again. Anyone who's ever had dealings with a rabbi where they say to you privately, they'll tell you something, but they'll say, but I can't make it public because they're afraid of the response. So, Ad Khan, Rav Zloty, and Rav Zloty is really the most detailed and I would say the best of the critiques of Rav Goren, and in some areas, Rav Zloty, I would say, does get good jabs in, good punches, and his argument seems to be stronger than Rav Goren. In other areas, it seems that, at least in my humble opinion, Rav Goren defends himself properly, and that he gets the better of the argument. And remember, Rav Goren's whole idea was to put argument on top of argument, to create a whole structure. So even though Rav Zloty shows that one position is weak, and he's able to take out a piece here and a piece there, you have to look at the sum of the matter. And So it doesn't seem to me, at least, that Rav Goren was able to fatally wound Rav Goren's argument. Now, such an issue, which everyone got involved in, you'd think that there would be loads and loads of responses. But I already told you that the mainstream Rabbanim in the Haredi world came to the decision that they're not going to respond to Rav Goren halachically. The idea was that if they respond halachically, then in the mind of the masses, you have two different arguments that legitimize. First of all, that legitimizes Rav Goren, and they wanted to completely legitimize him, that his argument is not even worth looking at. And second of all, once there's already a dispute, then in the popular mind, you see, well, there's two sides. If there's great rabbis arguing, there must be two sides. So instead, they adopted the approach which had been used at earlier times during the Shlita dispute when it came to electricity, just to establish this is the halacha. We're not getting into an argument because we don't want people to have the false impression that there might be another side. So it really doesn't take seriously and respectfully the arguments of Rav Goren. It doesn't even dignify them with a response. But I am aware of two other halachic attacks on Rav Goren's heter. One was by a rabbi in Philadelphia. His name was Rav Ephraim Yalis. There's a picture of him with the Lubavitcher. He's a Polish, a Hasidic. I mean, he came from Hasidic background, but he functioned as a more of just a traditional Rav, and a posek. He's the father-in-law, by the way, of Professor Feldblum of Yeshiva University. He was the premier halachic authority of based in Philadelphia. He wrote a volume of Chuvos, definitely a reliable Rav and Talmud Chacham, a reliable posek, I should say. Again, we're going to see one other rabbi as well. Not to take anything away from them, but at the end of the day, Rav Zloty was on the Beis Din Gadol. I sort of would regard him as in the same league as Rav Goren, even though I think the Rav Goren is much greater. Just Rav Goren is known already as an Eloi from the day he's from a teenager, and Rav Goren, everyone, no one, Rav Zloty is a great Talmud Chacham. He's a posek. You don't have these stories of him as an Eloi of knowing Shas. I mean, it's Rav Goren's in a class of his own. But that shouldn't mean anything if you oppose Rav Goren. Rav Moshe Feinstein already said that we have a lot of trouble from Iluyim. Iluyim create problems. But my point only is that I wouldn't put Rav Yalis, Kvodo Bimkom Munach, with all due respect, I wouldn't put him in the same category as Rav Goren, but that doesn't mean he can't have good arguments. But really, if you look at his piece in Hapardes, it's pretty weak. He only focuses on 2 points, uh, not really on, and really the 2 points he focuses on are made by the other Dayanim, not by Rav Goren. So that's the one argument. The other, also in Hapardes. Hapardes was the journal of the Agudas Rabbanim. It was a journal, a monthly, edited by Simcha Elberg. Agudas Rabbanim was nonpartisan, though. You had Mizrahi rabbis and you had Agudist rabbis. Most of the rabbis tilted towards Aguda, but not all of them. You had a number of Mizrahi rabbis, Talmidei Chachamim, who wrote for it, and they always showed great respect for Rav Soloveitchik and others. And if you look in the 1973, around the time of the Rav Goren Psak, you have only 3 articles, or Rav Zloty, I think, has 2 parts, and then you have Rabbi Yalis, and the one I'll speak about right now. But you have issue after issue of proclamations and attacks against Rav Goren. Not halachic responses, but attacks on him. And it didn't, it's unfortunate. So who's the other rabbi? The other rabbi is this individual. Some of you might have known him. Hold on, let me find him here. I don't know if you recognize right here. Rabbi Tibor Stern on the right. Shmuel Tuvia Stern. He, a survivor of the Holocaust, I think from Hungary, although I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure actually where he's from. I thought it was from Hungary. I'll check later. Could be Romania. Here's a picture of him in his earlier years. 1969. He was he was in Mexico for a while. He's in Kansas City. Then he was in Miami Beach for many years. A real authentic Talmud Chacham, wrote many, many Sfarim, many volumes of Shelos and Shuvos. He was a Zionist. In fact, he came out with, here's on HebrewBooks.org, you see all his Sfarim. But he came out with this book. Well, it begins this page. So already you see he's a Tzioni, because this is on the front page of his book. And what book is this? He wrote a book called Chukas Olam. Lessen the size of this page here. Beorim Hosafos Perishim with Chukas Medinas Israel Mutzas Al Yidei Torah v'Chazal. He published a halachic constitution for the state of Israel. Rav Herzog also did this. Israel does not have a constitution. So he published like a constitution, how to run a state. This is 1950. So he's a big Zionist then. Later on, you see he's not such a Zionist. He was a little disillusioned. He writes in one place that he was in Israel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and they treated it like July 4th, as opposed to with tefillahs and everything. Maybe he was in the wrong place. He should have gone to certain places they would have had tefillos. By the way, for those, so he's from Miami Beach. He wrote this book. Look at this, Maorei Ar Ezer Spheros, so a Kabbalistic book. But in the back of it, this is from 1964, Kuntras Tikkun Erevin Besofa Sefer. So I have it here. He wrote in 1964, from what he says, I don't know if this is correct, but he says there is no Erev anywhere in America. Now there wasn't, so he's really wrong about that, because there was the Manhattan Erev by 64 already existed. So fine, a lot of people didn't hold of it, but there wasn't an Erev, as far as I know, anywhere else in America. As far as I know, Toronto, or maybe Rabbi Kelman, if he's on, can help us on this. Toronto's not America, but did Toronto have an Erev at that time? I know Rabbi Price.
1922, Rabbi Grobert, I believe.
And it never went down? Because the New York Erev, the old original New York Erev, and the St. Louis Erev went down. Was no longer.
The St. Louis Erev, I think, was not. St. Louis, I think, was 1903, the first.
Yes,
Erev,
that was the first, but it wasn't
right.
in existence at this time. Was the Toronto Erev in existence? There always was.
As far as I know, it existed consistently since 1921, 22.
Okay, but he says Artso Sabris.
Right.
But there was a Manhattan Erev already unless the Manhattan Erev comes later in the 60s, but I think no. I think the Manhattan Erev was already in the 50s. They had it. I don't know. I got to take a look at. I have to look later. I'm going to look at Rabbi Mintz's. They were having discussions in the 60s. Maybe it wasn't in 64 or when he wrote the Chuvas earlier, 62 even. Maybe there wasn't an Erev in America. Okay, so what is his piece on? By the way, you want to hear Rabbi Kelman the first 3 minutes. I quote an email from Chaim Soloveitchik to me, correcting the famous myth. But okay, he writes, it's called Kudros Tikkun Erev Miami Beach. He has a whole piece here in which he argues that Miami Beach does not need anything else. It's a natural Erev, so all you need to do is, let's say, rent it from the city and all that. And he writes a whole article here saying that I don't know if this was ever put into practice, that they actually established it. I don't know if the other rabbis agreed, but he says that in the entire America, Miami Beach will be. He says it'll be the first of in our country, which is not true, because there was already in the early part of the 20th century in St. Louis and in the Lower East Side. But then he says many tried to establish an Erev in Manhattan, and until now it hasn't worked. So there obviously wasn't the Manhattan Erev, the famous one from the later in the 60s, definitely had it, and he doesn't know about the one in the Lower East Side. And he says, Baruch Hashem, I've gone through all the Shitos, and Miami Beach is you can solve it all. And if you know Miami Beach, he goes through, you got Indian Creek and Bay Harbor and Surfside. He thought that Miami Beach, as it is, he speaks about the bridges, And that's Rabbi Tibor Stern. So he writes another article. By the way, I spoke to him once. He's known. He was the mashgiach on Hebrew National for many years. When he passed away, that's when Ralbag took it over for Triangle K. But it was Tibor Stern. So Shmuel Tuvia Stern, and he was a big macher and a good Rabbanim. So I spoke to him one time. I never met him at Miami Beach. It was my fault. I mean, I was going to Miami Beach when he was alive. He's stuff from him, books or papers. I can't remember. I think Sfarim were given to the Yeshiva University when he passed away because he has children. And um, I spoke to him because Rabbi Yechiakov Weinberg mentions that Rabbi Tibor Stern visited him once, and he mentioned in a letter. So I called him up and I asked, "Do you have any letters from Rabbi Weinberg?" And he was nice enough. He faxed me the letter he had, and it appears in volume one of Kisvei Rabbi Weinberg. And that was the extent of it. Now, after he passed away, lo and behold, his grandson, or one of his grandsons, was the neighbor of my brother in Boca Raton. So when he inherited the whole collection of his archive. So I went through it once when I was down in Boca, and I didn't find so much interesting stuff, but I did find a letter of Rav Yosef, which I not to Rabbi Stern, but he had a copy of it because of the Buddhist Rabbanim about conversion, which I later published, and a few other interesting things I found. So he has a piece in Hapardes where also he disputes certain points that Rav Goren makes, including about the itter, which I mentioned before. But okay, it's he doesn't degrade Rav Goren or anything like that. And in fact, later Hapardes reported that Rav Tibor Stern visited Shmuel Tuvia, is his Hebrew name, visited Rav Goren, and Rav Goren he reports that Rav Goren is upset that he's isolated from the Torah world, etc., etc. Okay. A few months after Rav Goren's Sefer was published, there appeared an open statement by 31 Dayanim of the state of Israel, attacking, including Rav Shaul Yisraeli, the great Dayan of Rav Rosh Yeshiva Merkos HaRav later, attacking those who accuse the Dayanim of being cruel and being under the control of extremists. They don't mention Rav Goren by name, but it was directed against him. Because this is what Rav Goren says on page 116 in responding to the Petach Tikva based in which Rav Goren was furious with them because even though he provided new information, the Petach Tikva based in refuses to change their opinion. He says that anyone who goes over, these matters will feel that the Basin tried all the time how to forbid the children. And when they didn't find kosher edim, he says they used pasul edim. And when they couldn't find regular people, they used relatives. And when they didn't have that, and he says when they didn't have any good reasons, they came up with phony reasons. So Rav Goren, I have to say, Rav Goren started it by degrading the Dayanim on the Petach Tikva based in. So the 31 Dayanim from the state of Israel said that they published this open letter. You know what they say, that we are Dayanim. Of course, we always are compassionate, and we try to find, if there's a heter, we'll find a heter, but we can't create a heter out of whole cloth, and that this is a canard to say that we don't care, etc. Okay, now we have seen all the opposition to Rav Goren. I think we will see. Let's turn now to the defense of Rav Goren. What can we say about the defenders of Rav Goren? And before getting to the Dayanim, I have to mention that there are reports, and not just one, more than one, that the Gerer Rebbe tried to prevent this whole thing from blowing up. What would the Gerer Rebbe have to do with this? Well, because Rav Goren's father was a Gerer Chassid. Although he lived as like a Litvish Jew, although he still practiced certain as far as I know, he didn't wear a gartel, but he mitzitza b'peh, and he had certain Hasidic things. I don't know what nusach he davened. I mean, he was in Litvish yeshiva, so he became a Litvak, I guess. But his father was a Ger Chassid, and growing up, he was part of that Hasidus. So you can understand why they would have had feelings about this. Supposedly, this individual, hold on a second. Pinchas Menachem Alter. He becomes the Rebbe of Gur. I, by the way, also have Ger Hasidim in Eretz Yisrael, part of my family. They're not from Ger Hasidus. They come from this cousin I had, my grandmother's first cousin. I used to visit him when I was my year in Israel. He learned by Rav Shimon Shkop, the next person we're doing on our series. And somehow two of his sons became Ger Hasidim. And I used to go. One of them lived in Tzfat. I didn't know him, but one of them lived in Jerusalem, and I would go there for Shabbos, and I became quite close. Um, and I don't know because I haven't been in touch with them for years. Are they part of the regular Ger Hasidus now, or are they joined with Rosh Alter, the breakaway Ger Hasidus? Because this person, this son, the person, my third cousin or whatever he is, second cousin, once removed, however you figure that out, before he became a Ger Chassid, believe it or not, he learned in Brisk. That's a strange thing. So he understands learning, and the breakaway in Ger Hasidus is because mainstream Ger, they don't learn Be'iyun anymore. It's just Gemara and Rashi. If you want to really learn Be'iyun, you have to go to the breakaway, Rav Shaul Alter, who's a real Gaon. But this individual, Rav Pinchas Menachem Alter, who becomes the Rebbe in 1992, before that he's the Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshiva Sfas Emes. So it's reported that we don't have, at least I haven't seen the document, but it's reported that he sent Rav Goren a letter of congratulations when he became chief rabbi of the state of Israel. Now, many people sent Rav Goren letters of congratulations. If you look, you can see them online now. Rav Goren's papers are online by the archives of the state of Israel, and you have files there, files dealing with the Langer case, files dealing with Rav Goren becoming chief rabbi, and lots of letters from the usual people you'd expect, Rabbi Louis Bernstein, the people in America, and chief rabbis around the world, but not the Haredi world. So if Rabbi Alter, Rosh Yeshiva Sfas Emes, would have sent a letter of congratulations when the Haredi world thought this was the greatest harm to ever happen to the state of Israel, or if Goren becomes chief rabbi, that would be significant. Furthermore, it's reported that there were pashkavilin, written against Rav Pinchas Menachem Alter in response to his friendly approach to Rav Goren. That is, one thing's for sure: no one in Ger Hasidus signed a letter against Rav Goren, wherein all these other Haredi rabbis are signing proclamations against Rav Goren, that he shouldn't be chief rabbi, that he's going to destroy Torah Judaism. Noticeably absent is the Rebbe of Gur. Let's call Gur. Yeah, I always said Ger Hasidus, but Gur, we'll call it the way it's written in Hebrew. And Gur Hasidus is the largest Hasidus in Israel and the most important in the Agudas Yisrael. And the fact that nothing was said against Rav Goren, that says Darshani, it means something. And the story is that the Hasidim were able to get the Pashkavilin not put up against, although some did get out. Okay, now we have the 9 Dayanim that Rav Goren includes. In this book, he includes their letters affirming his psak, and that explaining that they have to be secret, because if not, they will suffer from the Haredi extremists. And when I say Haredi extremists, unless you assume they're all extremists, not just the extremists will try to set your house on fire. Yes, I get that. But the non-extremists, the mainstream Haredim, will read you out of their society. No longer will you be invited to their rabbinic gatherings. No longer will you be invited to their simchas. No longer will you be will your Torah be quoted? No longer will you be allowed to give a shiur at their yeshivas. I mean, it would be a complete cutting of ties. So who were these mystery Dayanim? It's even though they had all these negative things to say about Rav Goren, no one ever said that he made this up, that there weren't any Dayanim. No one ever said that. Everyone knew that there were Dayanim. So who were the Dayanim? So let me share with you now. We have for certain 8 Dayanim. One name seems to be missing, but we'll offer as possibilities who the 9th one is. But I will go through 8 of them now. Some of them you'll know, some I don't think you'll know. So who's the first one? Let me go through them. How do we know this? We know this. Eitam Henkin came up with some. There's a woman in Israel Meshalov. She wrote a dissertation on Rav Goren and some articles. She came up with some names, but her names are wrong. So, um, and then Yair Halevi, his dissertation, he gets the rest of the names. So we're certain, and some we're absolutely certain. The first one is, let's see, the first of the Dayanim is this individual. Um, he's not a household name. Maybe for the Syrians, maybe Jacob, you know him. His name is Shalom Yitzchak Mizrahi. He comes from Aleppo, Syrian community. He passed away in 1995. He wrote many volumes of Shelos and Shuvos, Shelotu Teshuvot, of halachic rulings. He was a dayan on the Beit Din Hagadol. So he's not a public figure in this, not a political figure, simply a Talmud Chacham, a dayan. And how do we know he was one of the dayanim? Because he agreed to have his name made public. He's the only one of them. Oh, well, two of the dayanim agreed to have their name made public. In fact, in the article here, it actually says that Harav Mizrahi, it says here, is included among the 10 rabbis who paskind heter with their names not being known. This is wrong, actually. There are 10 rabbis, but Rav Goren is one of the 10. 9 of them agreed with it to have their names not known. And but it's not true because he allowed his name to be made public. Already early on, he allowed his name to be made public. Maybe because as a Sephardic rabbi, he's not so concerned with the Ashkenazi Haredim. I mean, this was an Ashkenazic issue, really, not a Sephardic issue. So that's Dayan number one, Rav Shalom Mizrahi. Dayan number two is, we don't have a picture. His name is Eliezer Shapiro. Now, originally, I have documentation from Rav Goren, and when he refers to Rav Aleph Shapiro as supporting him, I thought at first it was Rav Avram Shapiro. Only later did I realize, no, it's Rav Avram Shapiro's nephew, and his name was Rav Asher Eliezer Kahana Shapiro. His father was the brother of Avram Shapiro. He learned in Chevron and Merkas Harav, and he became a dayan. And again, not a public figure. He didn't live very long. He died at age 59. There's a whole article here, a section in Wikipedia. I don't know who wrote this. It says that he was one of the 10 rabbis. Again, the same person wrote this, who says that they paskind with anonymously. There weren't 10 rabbis anonymously. There were 9. And he says Rav Shapiro is the only one who publicly announced himself. And that's true. So the first sentence is incorrect. The first sentence says that he's one of the rabbis that gave his psak anonymously, and then it says he's one of those who were public. He was completely public. Rav Eliezer Shapiro, at least actually Rav Goren cites him anonymously in his psak, but almost immediately upon the psak being issued, Rav Eliezer Shapiro makes himself known, who he is, and in Hatzofeh he writes articles defending Rav Goren's position. Now it says here, I believe, it's I think it's even in the Wikipedia article. Maybe it's no, it's not. It's not here. But he was obviously very brave. That he was willing to do this. Yeah, it says it here that because he supported Rav Goren, he too was sent letter bombs. That is, people were willing to blow him up. Shuto kamashmao. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with. We've seen enough. We've seen examples where religious violence, where it could lead to. And this was one of those times. So that's Dayan number 2. He served on, he was on the Moetzes Rabbanut Harashit, and he was on the Beis Din Hagadol. It says here he's on the Beis Din Hagadol together with Rishal Yisraeli, Rav Yosef Kafach, Rav Eliezer Voldenberg, that's Eliezer, Mordechai Yahu, Ravad Yosef, and more. So you're dealing with a Dayan, of the highest caliber, Beis Din Hagadol. That's number 2. Who is number three, third Dayan? By the way, as we go through all these Dayanim, if you maybe thought that this was a phony heter and this was Rav Goren just doing it to become chief rabbi and all sorts of, the fact is, it's not just Rav Goren. You have 9 Gedolei Yisrael who signed on to it. I feel upset that they didn't have the courage, other than Rav Mizrahi and Rav Shapiro, to publicly defend this position. But you can not, when you see who these people are, you can't honestly say that this was not a real halachic dispute, and these are dayanim who day in and day out are on the beis din. They know how to paskin shilas, and they deal with Even Hazer. Rosh Yeshiva don't deal with cases of mamzerus. Now, of course, there were dayanim who opposed it, Rav Zloty, Rav Elyashiv, but this is a dispute, which should never have become so crazy like it did. Who's dayan number 3? His name is Rav Shlomo Yaluz. He comes from Morocco. He comes to Eretz Yisrael, and then he's sent to Libya. He becomes the chief rabbi of Libya, and then he's in Morocco. In the Sephardic world, I guess a figure who's better known. We don't know him in the Ashkenazic world. He published 1 volume of Tshuvot, and I have to say this volume appeared posthumously after he died. We knew that he was on the beis din because after he died, when the volume of Tshuvot were published, and it was published a year after his death, so he probably arranged it. Lo and behold, you have his tshuva in defense of Rav Goren's decision. So he's dayan number 3. He was not on the beis din Agadol. He was av beis din in Ashdod. And so dayan number 3. Who is dayan number 4? I feel like the Price is Right or something. By the way, in his tshuva, I looked in his tshuva before, he mentions 3 sfeikot that he establishes that you can be lenient decision in this case. 1, did Barakovsky ever convert? There's enough of a reason to assume he never converted, or it's not certain that he converted. So it's a suffix doubt. So already you're halfway there to the heter. 2, did he ever marry Chava? Remember, that was halachically, that was the issue. We know that he ran away with her, or she ran away with him, and then they got married in a church. And then the claim is made that he was converted, and then they were married in a shul. But we don't really have halachic style evidence. We have testimony, but not of the sort that, and in these sort of matters, you need halachic evidence. I already told you the case a few weeks ago where Moshe Feinstein, it's at the chasana, where someone says to him that you can't marry these people. He knows that this person's a mamzer. And Moshe said, Al pishnei yedim. You're one person, you tell me this, I don't have to listen to you. And then he gives a third reason. The third reason is a problematic reason, which Rav Goren doesn't mention for, I can understand why. He says that, okay, there's a principle in mamzerus. It goes as follows. You have a woman, let's say, and this generally works very well in Chutzlaretz. It's a question about Israel, but in Israel also now the poskim use this. In fact, Rav Masas, the great Rav Shalom Masas, he came up with a whole approach to deal with mamzerus, and then Rav Avad Yosef agreed with him. It's basically impossible to have mamzerus anymore. The only way you would have it is if a woman if we know she's not pregnant, and then we put her in jail, let's say, with another Jewish man, and then she gets pregnant, even though she's married to someone else. Because other than that, it's almost, Rav Mesas basically completely gets rid of the mamzerus. Now, what does he do this on the basis? He says you have a woman, let's say she's married, but then she takes up with another man, a Jewish man, and she gets pregnant. So the kid's a mamzer, right? Because she's married and then she's pregnant from this other Jewish man. The answer is no. The kid is not a mamzer, because we say, just like this woman committed adultery with this man, the man we know about, so too we can assume she committed adultery with other people as well. Even if she's living, let's say she's married to Ruvain, and she leaves Reuven and she's living with Shimon, and then she gets pregnant. Uh, Rav Masas's halachic principle. Other people had a different principle. Other people said that, okay, if she just commits adultery with someone, we can assume she committed adultery with other people, including with a non-Jew, and therefore the child's not a mamzer. But other people said, but if she moves in with Shimon, then we have to assume it's a mamzer. Rav Masas said no, that it doesn't matter that if she's committing adultery with this person, she's committing adultery with others. And and with that principle, you can always assume that almost always assume that the woman's committing adultery, not just with a Jewish person, with a non-Jewish person. Therefore, the kids are not mom's there. And we don't do DNA testing, so we do halachic conclusions. What Rav Yeluz says is even a little further, because in the case of Langer, it's not a question of Langer leaving Barakovsky and then moving in with someone else and getting pregnant, which would have been what Rav Masas would have found a heter. The other rabbis would have said not. She doesn't realize that she needs a get. She actually then goes and marries Langer. Halachically marries him. So the idea that Rabbi Yelu says that just like she's living with Langer, so too she's living with other people. But she's not living with Langer. She's married to Langer, halachically married to Langer, even though she is married to someone else already, Barakovsky. So I think that's why this is a bridge too far, and that's why Rav Goren doesn't mention this, and even Rav Masas doesn't go this far. Um, I mean, the classic cases of Aguna are, I mean, this isn't really any different than the case where, like the Holocaust type case, where you think your husband's dead and you get remarried, or even you get a psak from a rabbi that you can get remarried, and lo and behold, the husband turns up one day. We can't say in a case like that that just like she was with husband number two, so too she was with all these non-Jewish lovers. No, that's not the case at all. But so that's weak. But the first two arguments are what Rav Goren says. Okay, so now we have three Dayanim, right? Rav Mizrahi, Rav Eliezer Shapiro, Rav Yeluz. No, yeah, okay, three Dayanim. Dayan number four. Of this, there are strong rumors. It hasn't been. It's been. We don't have it in paper that it is true, but we have it confirmed by people who always claim to know it is true. So it seems to be the case, and that is. Hold on a second. I have his picture here. I think. If not, I'm gonna have to pull it up. Hold on now. No, I mistakenly uh, deleted it, so I'm going to have to find it for you. Hold on a second. Let me just go out of this, and because you definitely everyone wants to see it, I think. Hold on. Yes, I mistakenly deleted it. Okay. Uh, this is a rabbi. Here. Oops. Hold on a second. I gotta share again. Here. Rav Yaakov Nissen Rosenthal. Someone who knew Rav Goren from their youth in Jerusalem. He was a real Zionist rabbi. Was Rav and Av based in Haifa for many years. He, you can, I mean, like I said, he was part of a religious Zionist world, although the Haredim respected him. Let's see if, I don't know, he was connected with the Rabbanut Rashid. He said, Halon Yom Ha'atzmaut. He thought that the state of Israel is Reshit Tzmichat Geulotenu. I don't see it. Here it says, so Rav Rosenthal is counted among those who supported it. By the way, look at this. He refused to sign a declaration in opposition to Sherut Leomi. And because of that, he was beaten by Kanaim and Bnei Brak. So he was attacked. Now, I have to tell you that although it does appear that it's Rav Rosenthal, um, he came out with a statement when when the rumors started going around that Rav Rosenthal was one of the Dayanim, he came out with the following statement. He said, "I did not sit with the Beit Din that freed the Langers." Remember, there was a Beit Din, Rav Goren and two other Dayanim who came together, heard testimony, and then issued a psak as a Beit Din that the Langer children are not mamzerim, and then six other Dayanim signed onto this. So I agree that Rav Rosenthal was telling the truth when he says, "I did not sit with the Beit Din that freed the Langers," but he never said, "I didn't sign it." He was very careful in his language, almost Clintonian. He said, "I didn't sit with the on the Beit Din that freed them." That leaves open the possibility that he signed it. And he never said, "I never signed it." He never said, "I was not one of the signatories to freeing them." So since he wouldn't say that, and there's reasons to believe that people investigated, he was one of the people who signed it as well. So that's Dayan number 4. Now, I think Meshalov mentions Rav Ushpizai as one of the Dayanim, but he was not a Dayan. He's the person who married them. He was the Rav of Ramat Gan. He wasn't a Dayan. So now we have 4 Dayanim. Who's the 5th Dayanim? Rav Goren gave it away. Rav Goren said that one of the Dayanim who mattered, who gave the heter, was earlier on one of the courts that ruled against the Langer children. And who was this? His name was, hold on, Rav Shmuel Tanchum Rubenstein. He was Av Beis Din of Tel Aviv. He wrote 1 or 2 of the volumes of the Rambam La'am, not all of them, and he's a posek, a dayan, and he was on one of the early Batei Din, not Petach Tikva, another one, as I recall, that I can't see it here. That they don't say it here. I don't. That so he's another one of Dayanim. So now we're up to 5 Dayanim. It's already 9:27. Okay, so next class, which will be, I hate to do this, but it's not going to be for 3 weeks again because I'm not getting back in time it takes me a few hours to prepare these classes. And I'm not going to get back in time to prepare it. So we'll see the other Dayanim and we'll see the Rav's position. We're coming to the end here. I do also though want to do the other conflict, which will only take us a class, even less, the Seidman case. But we're coming to the end. So we've seen 5 Dayanim. We still have 4 Dayanim to go to, but already you can see we're dealing with, a post-scheme, great post-scheme, and they side with Rav Goren. So this idea that people sometimes have that Rav Goren was all by himself, and wait till you get to the American posek, Rav Henkin. So we will get to that when I meet in 2 weeks. Let's see. Rabbi Yellen says the Sefer on Israel by Tibor Stern mentions he's in Kansas City. Yes, he was in Kansas City in those early years in the 50s, and then he went to Miami Beach.
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Yes, thank you, Mel. And Rabbi Yellen says the Eruv in the East San Antonio Valley uses freeways for the vast majority of its Eruv. Well, I mean, lots of places like to do that. In fact, they prefer to use things like that. I mean, he speaks about the canal in Miami. It all depends. When you go to Gibraltar, they use the water because there's a big drop off. It's a problem to use it if you like walk into the beach, but if it's a drop off, like you come to the water and there's like a wall there, they try to use they try to use these sort of natural things.
The last comment is
Rabbi Allen, you said who was born in Tveria?
Rabbi Yehuz, the third one. You said he was born in Morocco. The third one.
I said Rabbi Yehuz was born in Morocco. He was born in. You're saying
Tveria. The article says Tveria, from a family that comes from Morocco.
Oh, his family. Yes, his family comes from Morocco.
Yeah.
And then he went back to Morocco, actually, after he was in Libya, and then he was in Morocco. But he's from a Moroccan family. Okay, yes, thank you for pointing that out. By the way, the Moroccans where although he's not really Moroccan, he grew up in America and grew up in Israel, but the Moroccan Beis Din had authority just like the Israel Beis Din on all matters. Even Ezer, Choshen Mishpat. It's not like in Europe where it was just an optional thing. You wanted to go to a Beis Din, you went to a Beis Din. Every Jew in Morocco, marriage, divorce, inheritance had to go through the Beit Din in Morocco. And if you look in the Chuvos, so the rabbis of Morocco, when they published many, many volumes, there's more halacha, practical halacha volumes published in Morocco than there are published in Lithuania. You see, they all deal with Even Hezer, they all deal with Choshen Mishpat. So it's a halachic society. Okay. Thank you all. I want to wish everyone a Chag Kosher V'Sameach. It should be a great Pesach, and it's a good idea. If you saw the Wall Street Journal today, you saw the piece on remembering the hostages at the Seder, and so my wife saw it before me. She asked me to print out a number of copies of that. It's something that we should think about. And other than that, Rabbi Kelman, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chag Sameach. Yes, okay. Tomorrow, Alex Israel and Sarah Gordon will be our presenters 11 and 1. And then continuing on Wednesday, Chaim Angel and Ari Shvat. And then on Thursday, myself at 9:15 as opposed to 11 Thursday morning. And then Rav Yitzchak et Shalom at 10:45. So those are our 6 remaining shiurim for Pesach. So hope to see you, and invite a friend to come along, as we prepare for Pesach, and want to wish everybody well. And thank you, Marc. So I guess we'll see you, like you say, in 3 weeks. And Pesach ends, depends where people are, but okay, Sunday night. And okay, everybody should be well.
Yes, but those of us who are away, it's not so simple to get home sometimes. And
No.
so look, in theory, I could do the class in 2 weeks, but I can't prepare it the way I want to prepare it with all the books and all the sources and everything. I need a good 3-4 hours to do it the way I want to do it. So
Yeah, okay, no problem. Okay, Laila Tov, everybody.
Chag Kosher V'Sameach. Thank
All
you.
the best. Chag Sameach. Yes, okay, bye-bye, everybody. Yes.
Bye.